What is up, everyone? It is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. 2022 is going by way too quickly. So this month we are back with another reading wrap-up, so talking about all of the books that I read in the month of February and giving you my review and thoughts. So if you all have any books that I should check out, or if you have read any of these books that I am going to talk about, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts and recommendations. So let's get into what I read in February. So the first book I read in February was Cultish by Amanda Montell. So this book talks a lot about cults and the use of language in these cults, as well as how language can influence people, gain followers, gain that kind of cult following. So I thought this book was really interesting. I'm giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. Very fascinating read. Definitely makes you think a lot about modern day social media marketing strategies, how these big businesses are able to gain such loyal followers for the fitness brands that they're selling, like Peloton or SoulCycle. So the book definitely opens your eyes to a lot of things, so I enjoyed this read. The next book I read in February was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I feel like this novel is very popular on Book Talk, BookTube, and it was just made into a movie, so I was like, okay, let me check it out. So the premise revolves around two co-workers that really dislike each other. It's that enemies to lovers trope. Turns out they don't actually dislike each other, but they have secretly liked each other this entire time. So I would give this a 3 out of 5 stars, but maybe it's me. For the whole enemies to lovers trope, I am not sure if I'm a fan of. I will have to read other books like this to see, because it was like at the beginning of this novel, the guy main character is so rude to the girl main character for the enemies part that she literally breaks down crying because her self-esteem is so messed up because the guy keeps on calling her short and ugly and no one will ever love you. So it's like, if someone can have that much of an effect on you and they're being that rude, but oh, it's because he didn't really mean it, he's just shy, so now you can like each other. It's just sort of weird, because it's like, why would you want to get with someone that is ruining you and your self-esteem that much? Even if it is that they secretly like you, that they're being mean to you, I don't know, it's just weird. Next up, we have The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Similar to The Hating Game, this book is also raved about online. So this novel, I believe, is based off of Homer's Iliad, so it has a lot of Greek mythology, events, history, characters. So this novel follows Achilles and Patroclus, who are famous Greek mythology characters, and their love story. But for The Song of Achilles, I'm going to give it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The writing in this novel is super gorgeous and elegant. However, because I haven't read a lot of other Greek mythology books, or know a lot of the Greek mythology characters, some of the stuff was a little bit confusing, because the only character that I was familiar with in this book would be Odysseus. So all of the other characters, it has a little character map at the end which talks about the histories of the characters, but since I was only familiar with one from previous readings, I feel like I would have gotten more out of the book if I knew more of the Greek mythology myths, which is on me. So the next book I read in February was My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshve. So this novel follows a girl who is basically tired of her life. She has just come into a lot of money from her parents' inheritance, so she doesn't really need to work in New York anymore, and she decides that she basically wants to hibernate and sleep for a year to rest and recharge. So I would give this book a 3 out of 5. This book has such an interesting concept. So hearing that summary, I was like, oh, that's relatable. Like, who isn't tired of life and wouldn't just want to like rest for a year to recharge? Like, that sounds great. But then reading this book, I don't know. I felt like it sort of fell flat because in reality, locking yourself away for a year isn't really feasible, and it definitely glosses over a lot of serious topics like mental health. The next book I read in February is one that is talked about a ton online, so it is Verity by Colleen Hoover. This novel follows a woman who is invited to finish writing a series for another famous author who got into a car accident, so she is unable to finish writing. Except when she goes to the house that the husband and wife share so that she can go through the wife's notes to see if the wife had any information on how she wanted her series to end, the woman starts to discover some really twisted things about the author's past as well as the family's past. So I would give this a 4 out of 5 stars. This was such an interesting read. The ending is one that is up in the air though, so it's not really like a concrete ending, who was good, who was bad in this story, but it's sort of up for interpretation, which I'm not sure if I'm that big of a fan of. I'm like, I want an answer to this. If you don't like those kinds of endings, then maybe you don't read it, but I still highly recommend this. Verity is such a good and interesting story. Next up is also another popular book online. I finally got off of the wait list for like all of these books. So next up I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. This novel follows two people who knew each other back in college. They were writing rivals back in the day, but they never really interacted. Now the main character girl moves into this town and then she just happens to be, you know, next door neighbors with this guy who she was rivals with in the past. So they make this bet saying, I bet you can't write a novel based on the other person's writing style, their genre that they usually write with. So I would give this a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I don't know, the plot, I'm like, what really is the plot? Even on the back cover, it's like, you know, they're switching the genres, they're going on field trips together, and then it says they don't fall in love, but like it just is a love story of two people writing these books, which I don't know, it's just very straightforward because there wasn't really anything that these two people had to like accomplish or any issues that they really had to get around. There was like one obstacle, but then it was cleared up very quickly at the end of the book, and then it was all happily ever after. But it was a cute story, like it is a typical romance novel. If that is something that you want to read, it's like one of those cute romance novels, but I just was expecting more and wanting more out of it. Next up, we have The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. So this is another one of those books that won a 2021 Goodreads Book of the Year award. So I was like, okay, let me check it out. It is a winner in the category. And so this novel, it follows a wife who just married this guy and then he has a daughter. However, the husband goes missing at the beginning of the novel, and then throughout the book you're trying to figure out like what is happening, what is the history and backstory of the husband and his daughter. Why is he missing? Did something happen to him? Is he involved in crime and that's why he's gone missing? Answering those kinds of questions about their history. So I would give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I read it in one sitting in one night. It's really short, as you can see, so it's definitely a very quick read. I thought it was really interesting, and it just is sort of sad, sort of going into things like sacrifice and loss and what are you willing to give up in the name of love and family. So it was interesting to see the choices and actions of the characters in the book and sort of figure figuring out the mystery of like what is happening to this family, what is going on. Next up, we have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This novel is also raved about online so much. And unlike Beach Read, this one definitely lived up to all of the hype on the internet. So as the title suggests, this novel follows the seven husbands of Evelyn Hugo, who is an actress, a movie star in Hollywood back in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s. So literally going through Evelyn's entire life and all of her marriages. And so I would give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. It talks a lot about love, lost, friendships, relationships, as well as delving into topics like being gay and bisexual in Hollywood, how these characters go about their lives, but also are hiding their relationships because they can't be who they truly are in the media. So this book was such an emotional roller coaster. I read it really quickly because I just really wanted to figure out what was going to happen. The next book I read in February was It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. This book also talked about a lot online, and it says on the inside cover that it's a Schitt's Creek spin-off. So if you haven't seen that TV show Schitt's Creek, I definitely recommend it. It is such a good show. So in this book, a rich girl basically gets banished by her family, her mom and her stepfather, back to a small town where her birth father was from to basically learn a lesson on like money management, responsibilities, because in her life thus far, she's been a party girl, only caring about likes on her social media posts, an influencer who has no real regard for anyone else. So she gets sent away and then she meets this guy in the town, and then it's a romance book. And yeah, I would give this a 1 out of 5 stars. For me, reading this, I just felt like you don't connect to either of the two main characters. Like this rich privileged girl who is really out of touch, then by the end of the book she's like, oh, I don't care about likes anymore, that kind of thing. It's just hard to relate to. And then also, I personally didn't feel like the two characters had anything in common. Like, oh, they meet and then 2 seconds later they're already loving each other. And this book also truly read like fan fiction. Literally every single thought from the guy main character and the girl main character is talking about how much they want to rip the other person's clothes off, and that just gets old. And then there's like so many sex scenes that are so long. It just really read like fan fiction, and I was not a fan of this. Next up, to go with The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, we have another Taylor Jenkins Reid read with Daisy Jones and the Six. So this novel basically follows the creation, rise, and fall of a band from the 1960s to the present. So following the main characters of the band, their storylines, as well as the creation of the band, their songwriting, their rise to popularity and fame, and the fallout of the band. It's actually going to be a TV series, so then we will be able to hear the songs and the music that is talked about so thoroughly and in depth in this book. So I'm excited for that to come out. For this novel, I would rate it a 3.5 stars. The concept was so interesting. The way that this was written was so interesting because it's written in like interview format, but for the plot and for the storyline, I sort of felt like it was, I don't know, I guess like predictable. So this one, it was good, I liked it, but definitely I felt the storyline to be very plain. And last up, for physical books before we get into the audiobook zone, I read The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. It's a romance book between a PhD candidate with a young professor. So going through their meeting, their love story, but with a twist because the PhD candidate and the professor sort of start fake dating to help the main character girl show her friend that she's not interested interested in this other guy. So I would give this a 4 stars. It was a cute read. I was reading it so quickly. I was like, oh my gosh, got to keep reading to figure out what was happening. The ending, I feel like, was just not satisfying. Maybe it wrapped up too quickly. I really wish it delved more into women in STEM and the Title IX suit that the main character was bringing up, and maybe the aftermath of that, rather than wrapping it up so quickly with a nice clean bow. And finally, the 12th and final book that I read during the month of February is Into the Wild by Jon Krakauer. So I listened to the audiobook of Into the Wild on the app called Libby. Libby is like an online library app where you can rent books for like your Kindle, or you can also rent audiobooks. And so this book is based off of the true story of Christopher McCandless, going over his life after college, where he sort of goes into that nomadic lifestyle, moving around a bunch, working odd jobs, living freely and living the life that he wants up until the point that he disappears and then is found passed away. But yeah, those were the 12 books that I read during the month of February. If you have any book recommendations that I should read in the coming months, definitely also let me know, because I'm always looking for new things to read. And yeah, if you liked this video, give it a big thumbs up to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.